I hope you had a great weekend and you're ready to look at some charts because today we're going to be doing some technical analysis for the SPY, Qs, Apple, Tesla, Amazon, and NVIDIA, and then we're going to touch on the VIX. There's some very important things across the board, so we want to touch on all of it today. But first, I told you guys that we were going to bring up a monthly here because we are actually in a new month, and that's very important. And I'm going to tell you guys just how important this month is. And if you've followed me for quite some time, you know I just use the MACD and RSI, and I want to show you how important this month is for the market. As we can see down here on the MACD, we actually wanted to cross over, and we are very close to that center line, meaning we could see a downward or negative, trend in the actual overall market start to occur. When we do go below this center line, that means the trend is now shifted to the downside. And when you see something like that happen on the monthly, it is very, very bad news, right? It could be very, very bad news, and it could mean something is going to crash in the system. Now, that actually did not happen. This first week has pushed us up. We still have time to break down from this level. Overall, if you've been following this channel and you've been following it for quite some time, maybe I'll do this again and go over what I think, for the macro side, and I'll give you a quick spiel about it right now. Right now, I think that we are going to experience a bull run for a few months here. We're actually going to experience it for maybe even up to 9 months, okay? And then when that actually happens, I believe that we are going to test this all-time high on the SPY, and then we could even push past it and go to levels upward towards 520, okay? 520 on the SPY, that would be huge. And then if we do see some kind of downturn, we might see that divergence start to come in. We talk about divergence on this channel a lot. And if you do start to see this cross, at that point, that means all hell is going to break loose. But I just wanted to let you know on the macro side, I am leaning towards a bull run to test this high. And if we do not get some kind of lower high or something like that, then I do believe we can extend as high as 520. So next week I will give an actual, video and I'll spend a little portion, maybe 2 or 3 minutes of the beginning of my video next week in order to show you guys what I'm overall expecting, the direction, and where we could end up in an actual crash that could happen in 9 months, okay? I believe that this is not going to be the crash right now, but I do believe that this is giving us some kind of hint, right? We're rejecting off of that expected monthly move, okay? This is the expected monthly move for November, this yellow line here, and you can see we have our updated weeklies with the purple lines, okay? So you notice that we did see those sellers step in, which makes total sense up there because we have some good liquidity up there, and we're going to grab that liquidity, and people are going to see this as resistance up here, and we could sell off from this area. Now, when I say sell off from this area, I believe that this week we could see some dramatic selling, okay? Either we're going to fiddle around up here for a little while, but overall, I do believe eventually we are going to see some kind of dramatic selling because of this move here. Now, if you know, we actually had our weekly expected move. I think it was way down in here, right? And we actually bursted above it. It might have been even lower down in this area. And when we do get outside of that weekly move, that means that the market makers were kind of caught off guard, and we see this explosion because they have to reposition at that point, okay? So if you think about this, some of them, those market makers, they still probably have shorts, and so they might want to push this down to lower levels. And the good part is we have gaps that we can see, easy points where we could see some kind of higher low, okay, next higher low set up. And if we just look at this from an overall technical standpoint, we can see that possibly what is forming here is the left shoulder, the head, and then we get a dramatic sell off that tricks people into thinking that this is going to sell off one more time because we've had a bearish few weeks, right? And then we get this explosion. They're thinking, oh, nope, this was just a short squeeze. No, I believe that this is going to set up some kind of higher low to give us this right shoulder. It would line up with this liquidity real nice, right? It would line up with our gap fill real nice. And then we can see how that plays out. And maybe we do get some kind of right shoulder and we're able to burst out of this continuation flag here. And then we can extend to higher levels by testing, these highs up here. Now, the reason I'm leaning towards that pullback, okay, the reason I'm leaning towards that pullback is because this is a very, very steep move, okay? You have a very steep move going upward, pretty big short squeeze going on here, and there are very little pullbacks in between this, okay? So if you didn't, catch this move, don't worry. There's always multiple times to take a trade. The worst thing you can do is see this big direction going up on a 2-hour, be completely overbought and think, okay, this can go higher. No, this most likely does need to digest, even if it means it needs to, fondle around for a while. At least you can pay attention to that to see some sort of breakout. But right now I am leaning towards a test of these gaps, right? I think we're going to possibly at least fill this gap, which would line up with that weekly expected move as of right now. And we will update that for tomorrow's video because sometimes it changes a little bit. But I would not be surprised for this, because it was such a dramatic move, that people take profit and these market makers need to reposition, and we get some big dramatic move down into, 422 or something like that before we get that full right shoulder caved out. Now, if we do start to head upward from this area, okay, I believe that we are going to, we need to stay open to most scenarios here. And if we do start to head upward, you can see we're already overbought. So if we get even more overbought, we most likely are going to pull up like a 30-minute or an hourly and see some divergences start to form. Okay, so if this does, sell off a little bit and then trickle back up, let's say we just pull back into here and we go back up and maybe we get to our top of our weekly expected move, I believe we will see that divergence form, and we'll update you on that throughout the week. But I overall want you to pay attention to just how overbought we are and how we are starting to see that steer down. Okay, we're starting to give up this 9-day finally on this move, right? We're starting to give it up. We start to break down below the 20. You're going to head to that 50 on the 30-minute pretty quick. Now, around this area, you could see buyers step in, and maybe that's all we get. But I do believe there will be some kind of selling to set up a right shoulder. Whether or not that is, price action dinking around up here for a while, kind of like we did in this area before, that's to be determined. So we got to be ready for us to dink around for a while, and then maybe we do see some kind of breakdown to go find some more buyers to get this move going even higher. The Qs here, I actually did update these monthly ranges, so they have changed a tiny bit, okay? But we can see that our expected move is at this high. So there is potential that we on the Qs want to go test this high, okay? I just want to tell you guys that because we are up here in this point, and maybe we do set up that, higher low or lower high, sorry. And then we do want to come back from this area, but I'm telling you, we could see, because this was a strong move, we could see another test of the top of our flag here, and we could even see a test of that weekly expected move before we see sellers step in, because it lines up with this high so well. So I just want you to be careful with that, okay? And even though this will look a little wonky, you still can have a head and shoulders if this doesn't meet up with that point, okay? So we could see maybe some more buyers step in and then drop that down, but if it doesn't, we still can see that little, left head and right shoulder start to set up for us. If you do see more dramatic selling, okay, I just want to go over if we do see some more dramatic selling, I don't believe that this will be the crash at this point, okay? We got that pause, so that's what I was looking for, and that's what I've been telling you about for a couple weeks now. We got the pause. Congrats to us. Hell yeah, pat on the back. But if we do see dramatic selling from this point, you can look for that divergence. But just because of how the weeklies are set up here, these gaps that can be easy little bear traps for, people who are still in a bearish mindset, we can actually see that right shoulder really carve out, okay? We need these people to rebalance their positions, and maybe they want to sell out of these positions so that we can go to lower levels so that they can get out of their shorts, and then they can flip to the long side. Now, I did show you the 2-hour on the SPY, but I just wanted to show you guys why it looks like we need some kind of pullback. We talk about healthy moves, okay? And what I would say is this is not an overall healthy move, okay? We around this area right here, this would have been the healthy thing to do around this liquidity in here, okay? We're going to discuss that real quick on an hourly. Here is the healthy thing that would happen. If we would have set up some kind of, shoulder here. So you got your left, you got a head, and then if we actually would have pulled back from this area and set up that right shoulder, this move would actually look pretty healthy. We would have bought some time. But because we didn't do that, you notice, what did we do from Thursday to Friday? We gapped above it and just kept going, which just tells me that this level right here is very important. And because this level is very important, it actually sets me up to think, hey, this might be where a higher low could be set up with some kind of bigger right shoulder in the overall grand scheme of things. So I just wanted to show you guys a healthier move would be something like we had over here. Okay, so let's just point that out since it's kind of, it looks very similar. It looks pretty good. Okay, so right here, you did have this level right here. And then you have your left, you have a head, you have a right shoulder. And once that is broken, we retest and then we go. That is what a healthy move looks like. And therefore, I believe that this move is going to fade this week or, over the next 2 weeks because we could see some wonky price action up here. We could see an up day and then we get some wonky stuff up in here with a little fight. But I would really, really like as a trader for this to create that right shoulder so that this market can remain healthy. Because if we start extending to higher levels outside of this weekly range, I do believe that we might need to start leaning towards the bear side again. Right now, I am bullish, but I'm just telling you right now that this move needs some kind of pullback because we are absolutely cooked on the hourly RSI, right? We are cooked, we are overbought, and we need some kind of pullback. Apple looks like it's doing what the market overall should, right? It should dip down into lower levels to buy at this point. And the earnings was it was actually pretty good. I mean, their services are doing really well. It's just the thing that people really care about is the iPhone sales. And I believe those weren't really to par. And I believe they guided forward not very well, right? They guided down a little bit. So we could see some selling from that, but we don't get that dramatic selling. You see how those buyers really want to step in this area, most likely because of that pausing. So I do believe in Apple, we actually could see, because we are at the edge of that purple zone. We're right at that 50 on the daily. Maybe we do get some kind of rejection to head to lower levels, maybe to the bottom of this little purple zone here that we like so much, right? We like this zone because we talk about how we break out of it a lot of the time, but we've talked a lot about this zone on this channel, okay? It's a very important zone where buyers are. So if we do see dramatic selling, I would expect us to stay in this zone at this time. Now, if we do break down from this zone, I would expect us to actually come and test that low, maybe even cut a little bit and set up another divergence. And then we can maybe see a strong move in the future. I just wanted to tell you, I'm not leaning towards that. I overall think we will set up some kind of, higher low in this area and then burst out of this continuation wedge that we've had going for quite some time here. It's important when looking at Apple to notice what we like to do, and maybe this is happening right now. So I want to be open to all scenarios at this point, and we can see that as we do break out of this zone, right, we are coming back into it. And a lot of the time we do like to do that in order to head higher, okay? Over here, to the left of your screen, you can see we actually come out of that zone, we dink right back in the top of it, and then we head higher. Just the fact that we actually did get buying into this is pretty impressive here, but I'm leaning towards it. But this could break out. The thing is, if this does break out, I would expect a very quick retest back into this purple zone in order to make a more explosive move higher. And lastly, just on Apple, I just wanted to say that we do have that triple divergence that is completely confirmed at this point. So I do believe that the direction for this stock over the next couple of months is to the upside, okay? If we are able to actually curl up and get this MACD back into positive territory, you can see the RSI is above 50, then we can actually see a big move in Apple coming into the end of the year, okay? So we want to pay attention to that because this divergence here is very, very strong when you see a triple divergence on a daily chart. Tesla, we were talking about how we broke down from this area, and you'd be thinking to yourself, hey, this is kind of a rejection candle from the 20, and maybe we need to head lower. The good news here is we did close above that 50. I wouldn't be surprised for us to head down and fill this gap right around that 407.42 that we've been paying attention to. We've been paying attention to that for quite some time, ever since the dramatic sell-off that we got right around here. So it turned out to be an okay level to start to, invest, okay? Now, it doesn't mean that we can't, dip down to then go find some buyers to make another move. And if we actually, sorry, I just got a subscriber, I think. So thank you for subscribing. I really appreciate it. But you can see here, even on the daily, if we just blow this up just a tiny bit, I don't even think we need to go into an hourly, but I might just pull it up so you can see it a little cleaner. You can see here that we are actually setting up some kind of wonky head and shoulders, okay? You got your left, you got a head, and maybe we carve out some right shoulder, okay? So I want you to look into that for Tesla. We did break out of this little wedge that we had forming here. Let's just go into the shorter time frame. Let's really look at it. The overall thing that I like about Tesla here is we are getting rejection at the level that we really should, and you can see where that liquidity is, okay? That liquidity is adding up right into this area, and we did dip below that, but we actually could see this come down all the way to fill that gap, and it lines up with liquidity in here. We have liquidity in here, so it's a good little buy zone, okay? I do overall believe that Tesla is going to set that up. And if we do think that is going to change and there's some bad news that comes out, we will inform you every single night. So make sure you are, and thank you for subscribing. Okay, Amazon here had the explosive move, right? We've exploded higher. And with these two last, Friday and Thursday candles, we can just say this. It looks like the momentum's starting to die out, even on the daily, okay? You can see it kind of with these candles forming that we are starting to die out. The good part is you actually got into positive territory on the MACD and you're in positive territory on the RSI. So I do believe that we are due for some kind of pullback. But since it does look different from the other charts, where could that pullback be? And I believe that this area in here is going to be very important. Okay, so we're going to talk about 2 points here, and I believe that if we do come down to this area, you'll notice it lines up with all of our moving averages, and maybe we're able to use those moving averages to explode higher, gaining some of this liquidity in here. Okay, so I want to pay attention to that. Now, if it does have a deeper sell-off, we'd most likely be looking for some kind of retest. Okay, if we get some kind of retest, way down into here, okay? This area right in here is going to be very important. We exploded higher past this area. You notice that we gapped higher past this area, so we don't necessarily want to break down below here. So I want to pay attention to all of those things just because I overall think that we do need some kind of pullback. I want to find little points where I could find, hey, there's some people in here that like the stock, or maybe this resistance up here turns into buyers, right? And then maybe if we go a little bit deeper, we can look a little bit lower into this area, which caused this big explosive move. I just want to bring up the 2 hours because you notice how when we do talk about those ranges and things like that, something very important to know about the MACD and the RSI is we can stay overbought for quite some time. As you can see, we actually reached overbought on Wednesday, November 1st, and we are continuing to stay overbought until right now. That's going on 3 days, right? So 3 days overbought, and we still haven't seen a pullback. It just tells me that a lot of people might still have shorts and they might, or a lot of people have calls into this move, but I believe market makers most likely do still have shorts and they might need to pull this back in order to get out of those positions, okay? So they might see, we might see some selling come out throughout the week. I just don't know exactly when. I actually think it might even be Monday that we do get some kind of dip, and you can see how well this point right here, this gap fill lines up with this liquidity in here. It looks like a good area where we could see another higher low set up for Amazon. What have I been saying about NVIDIA? Yes, we've been pointing out and talking about on this channel how there is a left, a head, and a right shoulder. But overall, my take on this was going to be one of the last bear traps, right? This is going to be one of the last bear traps before we see an explosive move. And this is kind of similar to Amazon based on how it is, and we'll go into the shorter time frames. Overall, what I was telling you on NVIDIA was to pay attention how we act in this area here, okay? This area here is kind of like your last line in the sand before we see a mega drop because we have that big gap going on right here, okay? So we wanted to pay attention to that. And let me just blow this up so it's a little closer for you. Okay, so the good part is here that we are seeing that divergence start to play out, right? We're getting that divergence on the MACD, on the RSI, all at the same time. And that's overall what we are telling you to look out for. So hopefully that was helpful to you, okay? Now you are getting that confirmation as of Friday. But just because there is a buy signal, just because we have that cross on the MACD, it doesn't mean that we can't see a pullback. And the good part about the hourly on most of these charts is they are in positive territory. You can see the MACD up here. We are in positive territory right up in here. That means that if we do get some kind of rollover, even to go fill this gap, we can see buying step in. You can see that would line up with some liquidity in here. So around this area is what I'm going to pay attention to, right around that 422-ish area. And you can see if we do roll over on this MACD and we don't cross down to negative territory, or maybe we do cross down to that negative territory for a short period of time, we see that curl back up, you're gonna probably see a higher move in NVIDIA coming, okay? You're gonna see maybe even an ABC of this whole pattern start to play out. There's head and shoulders popping up everywhere, and as we pull up the 10-year yield here, okay, as we pull up this 10-year yield, which is really sold off, right, since Jerome Powell talked, and that's what we were talking about on this channel. We can see that rapid sell-off once we get that pause. That's exactly what's happening, but there's a bunch of head and shoulders setting up here. So you do have your left, you have a head, and you have maybe a right shoulder that is about to carve out right around this area. So we actually do see that wicking staying above the 50. Maybe this could be considered our neckline at this point. We will see some kind of pop to create that right shoulder. That's what I'm going to pay attention to in the 10-year yield. And then you'll notice we're actually not going to see a major downside in the 10-year yield until we cross into negative territory. Okay, once we do cross into negative territory, this thing can really sell off to the downside. So we want to pay attention to this because when we do get little pops, right, dramatic pops in the 10-year yield, it can lead into some selling in the market, which might cave out or carve out that right shoulder for a lot of our stocks. It might carve out that right shoulder for the SPY, and it might even carve out this right shoulder here on the 10-year yield. And you can see that on the flip side, you can see TLT here actually rejected from that 50 pretty hard. Okay, so rejected from that 50 and we left a couple of gaps. TLT does like to fill its gaps, okay? So we did just fill pretty much all these gaps, right? We filled those within 2 days, okay? So we want to maybe fill these gaps right now and carve out that right shoulder, left, head, and maybe we go carve out that right shoulder, which lines up with some liquidity in here. So we want to pay attention to that. I believe that we are going to see some selling into this week. And the good part is if TLT actually starts to sell off and carve out this right shoulder while the SPY trickles higher, over the next couple of days, we will notify you about that, because a lot of the time when you do see that, that discrepancy between the two, then the overall market is the one that is wrong. And then we do need to see some kind of sell off. So we do see the SPY actually head higher while TLT starts to carve out this right shoulder. We'll know, hey, the SPY actually might need to come down to lower levels in order to go higher at this point. And another one you can pay attention to is high yield growth. Okay, HYG, we do pay attention to that as well. This one we use more often than TLT to compare the market, but you can see here that we wanted to pay attention to this right when this happened. Okay, we actually saw the SPY. I'm just going to draw this out. Okay, so right around here, the SPY actually did this. It came down into this area while HYG actually held up. So that was our signal that this is most likely going to be the bottom, and we're going to see some upward, some up move. Okay. Now, I didn't think that it would be this big of a short squeeze, but usually when that big of a short squeeze happens, that means that even the market makers were taken back by that buying pressure. So we might need to see high yield growth start to head to lower levels, and we can pay attention to the difference between high yield growth and the SPY. But you'll notice there are some very key the gaps here, okay, and they're lining up with this liquidity right in here. So we could see high yield growth start to back off, and we'll just pay attention to if there's a difference between high yield growth, TLT, or the SPY. Now, in Thursday's video, we were talking about possibly a head and shoulders starting to form on the VIX. Okay, so there's a lot of head and shoulders going everywhere. And if these start to carve out, I believe that they're all actually going to play out. So we see the left, we see the head, and maybe we do carve out that right shoulder still. Sure, we cut below this. Maybe we just wanted to fill this gap. We could still see some repositioning come in and go carve out this right shoulder. If this does actually get above 20 for a second, it's going to scare a lot of people out of their positions, and then we could just flip the other way. So we want to pay attention to all these scenarios. And you'll notice the biggest thing that happened this week was we closed below the 200, we closed below the 50, and we actually started to bend that 50 back down. Okay, so your crash indication would be if this 50 actually was getting above the 200, okay, that would be kind of a crash indication for you. But you're seeing that 50 start to steer downward at this point. So if we do get some kind of sell-off, I do believe the VIX will pop, obviously, and we could just see a right shoulder start to form. And the good part is if we're going to see more dramatic selling, then you'll see this indication, come into play, right? We'll see most likely these highs get taken out in the VIX, and these will be very obvious if we start to close above this level, and then we see that crossing of the 50 across the 200, then we can say, hey, there might be some downward pressure, and we're going to notify you about that on this channel every night as well. Okay, so hopefully that was helpful. Thank you so much for making it to the end of the video. The overall takeaway for this video is, yes, we saw an explosive move. Yes, we got the pause, but even in an explosive move, we do get pullbacks. And the fact that this was such an explosive move that left behind some gaps, and we like to fill those gaps 80% of the time within 5 trading days, we could see a dramatic sell-off that just could be repositioning in order to go gain some buyers to head higher. Thank you so much for liking, subscribing, commenting. You guys have been great. And I even got my first donation. So thank you so much for donating. The link's down in the description there if you feel like it. Hopefully, I just really hope that this information is helpful to you. And that's overall my goal with this channel, is to give good information. So I appreciate you guys watching the whole video, and I hope you have all the luck in the world trading this week. Peace.